The morning Malik Carter walked into Crestwood National Bank, the lobby was glowing with the shine of polished marble and the hum of quiet wealth. The tall glass doors reflected the world outside like mirrors, making Malik almost hesitate before entering. His sneakers cracked at the sides and faded from years of looked even more, worn under the sparkling lights. His thrift store jacket, 2 sizes too big, swallowed his thin frame as he clutched a brown envelope against his chest. Inside it were the most important things he owned: his grandmother's final letter, a bank card with his name on it, and documents she left behind before she passed away. Malik didn't come to ask for anything free. He came only to check the balance of the account she told him about. She made him promise that when the day came, he would walk into this bank with his head high. But the moment he reached the counter, that promise felt like a weight on his shoulders. Behind the main desk stood branch manager Richard Halston, a man with perfectly styled hair, an overly expensive cologne, and a smile that held no warmth. When Richard turned and saw Malik, his expression shifted instantly. His brows rose, then fell into a smirk that spread slowly across his face. "You?" he said, his voice loud enough for several clients to hear. "You want to check your account balance?" His laugh echoed through the entire lobby like a cruel announcement. Conversations paused. A few customers turned. Malik felt every eye on him. "This is Crestwood National, son, not a charity office," Richard added, looking him up and down as if Malik were something tracked in from the street. The boy tried to speak, throat tight. "My grandmother. She opened it for me." But Richard waved a hand dismissively, already irritated that Malik was still standing there. "Where did you even get those shoes?" he mocked. "Or that jacket? You think you belong here?" A couple of clients near the line chuckled. One man whispered loudly, "What a joke." Malik swallowed hard, fighting the heat rising in his face. He knew his clothes weren't new. He knew he didn't look like the people around him. But his grandmother always said, "Clothes don't decide your worth." So he took a breath and tried again. "My grandma saved everything for me. She left it in this envelope." Richard snatched it before Malik could finish, ripping it open with unnecessary force. He pulled out the documents, flipping through them carelessly. Then he froze. The black premium-tier bank card gleamed between his fingers. For a second, only 1 second, there was a flicker of confusion in his eyes. But instead of thinking, he defaulted to the comfort of his prejudice. "Where did you steal this?" he snapped loudly, holding the card up like evidence in a criminal trial. Gasps and whispers rippled through the room. Malik's heart dropped. I didn't steal anything," he managed, voice trembling but still steady. "It's mine. She left it to me," Richard scoffed, rolling his eyes dramatically as if performing for an invisible stage. "Right? And I suppose she also left you a penthouse downtown?" The crowd laughed. Customers who had been friendly moments earlier now seemed eager to join the spectacle. Even Grace Whitfield, the senior teller Malik had always seen smiling at other customers, leaned toward Richard and with a smirk asked, "Should I call the police, sir?" Malik felt something inside him crack. He wasn't a thief. He wasn't a beggar. He was just a boy trying to honor his grandmother's last instructions. But Richard didn't see that. He only saw a kid who, in his mind, didn't belong in a place of wealth. Instead of checking the documents, Richard waved toward the corner of the lobby near the janitor's closet. "Sit there. Don't move. I'll call headquarters and see what scam you're trying to run." Malik's chest tightened as he walked across the marble, each step heavier than the last. No one cared. No one asked if he was okay. A woman in a designer dress actually stepped around him as if he were in the way. He sat down on the cold metal chair, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The brown envelope sat on his lap like fragile evidence of a promise breaking apart. He opened his grandmother's letter, the paper already soft from being read 100 times. Her handwriting was shaky but full of love. "My brave Malik, never let anyone make you feel small. You are worth more than they will ever understand." Those words were supposed to make him strong, but right now they hurt because he wasn't sure he believed them. Time passed painfully. 10 minutes, then 20, then almost 30. Malik watched people come and go, watched Richard welcome a well-dressed man who arrived long after him, watched Grace smile at a woman who deposited a check that looked like more money than Malik had ever seen in his life. Malik remained invisible, forgotten deliberately. He marked every second as proof that the world chose who mattered and who didn't. He checked his phone. A message from his uncle appeared. Meeting running late. Be there soon. You're doing great, champ. Malik closed his eyes and breathed slowly. He didn't want to worry Uncle Marcus. He didn't want anyone to know that he was sitting alone, feeling like he didn't belong anywhere. Finally, after nearly half an hour, Richard called him back, not to the main counter where real customers were helped, but to a cramped desk near the back wall where people came only to complain about lost cards or rejected fees. It felt intentional. Malik sat straight, placing his grandmother's documents neatly on the desk. "Let's get one thing clear," Richard said, leaning forward with cold authority. "You don't come in here dressed like that, claiming accounts you couldn't possibly have. You expect me to believe a boy like you has a premium tier account?" Malik lifted his school ID with shaking hands. "I have this, and the letter, and the card with my name on it." Richard picked up the ID with 2 fingers, holding it away from himself as if Malik were contagious. He flicked it back on the table where it slid toward Malik and nearly fell off. "This means nothing," he said with a dramatic sigh. "Any child can print a school ID. What about your guardian? Where is this mysterious uncle of yours?" Marcus was supposed to be coming any minute, but Malik knew that wouldn't matter. Not to this man, not today. Then Richard leaned back, crossing his arms in a pose of manufactured authority. "Your grandmother," he said with fake sympathy. "What did she really do? Maybe something illegal? Because she certainly didn't earn this kind of money honestly." For the first time, Malik felt anger mix with his fear. His grandmother was the most honest, hardest-working person he knew. But before he could speak, Richard stood up abruptly, raising his voice so the entire lobby could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the disruption," he announced. "This is what we deal with. People who don't belong here trying to take what isn't theirs. But don't worry, we're handling it." Some customers nodded approvingly. Some smirked. None defended the trembling boy sitting at the desk. Malik's eyes burned. Tears blurred the room, but he didn't cry. Not yet. He stood slowly as Richard ordered security to escort him out. Harold Jones approached reluctantly, his face filled with silent regret he was too afraid to act on. Malik held his grandmother's letter against his chest like armor and walked toward the doors alone, trying to carry his dignity even as laughter echoed behind him. When he reached the exit, his phone rang. With his hands shaking, it slipped from his fingers and cracked against the floor. Harold picked it up, their eyes meeting for only a second. Malik saw something unexpected there. Shame. Deep shame. But no words came. No apology, no courage. The doors opened automatically as Malik stepped outside into the cold air. As the wind bit through his thin jacket, Malik sat on the lonely bench and pulled his legs close, trying to stay warm. He tried calling Uncle Marcus. No answer. He sent a message, fingers trembling. "They kicked me out. They said I stole the card. They called me a thief." He stared at the cracked phone screen, waiting for a reply. But none came. People walked past him, some glancing briefly, others ignoring him completely. A dog tried to approach him, tail wagging, but its owner yanked the leash and hurried away. To them, Malik wasn't a child who needed help. He was just something they didn't want to see. He unfolded his grandmother's letter once more, reading the words through a veil of tears. Dignity is not given. It is carried. But at that moment, dignity felt impossible to hold. He felt small, abandoned, unseen, until the distant hum of an engine grew louder. A sleek luxury car slowed to a stop near him. The door opened, and everything in Malik's world was about to change. The moment the luxury sedan stopped in front of the bank, Malik didn't lift his head. He was staring at the cracked screen of his phone, reading his uncle's last message over and over again. "I'm coming soon, champ." He didn't want Marcus to see him like this. Not outside a bank he had been thrown out of. Not with red eyes, not shaking, not humiliated. But he didn't have a choice. The car door opened sharply and footsteps, quick, controlled, deliberate, approached him. Then came the voice, deep, familiar, grounding. "Malik?" Malik looked up, and all the strength he had been forcing himself to hold together shattered at once. Marcus Carter stood there in a steel-gray suit tailored to perfection, his face carved with concern and rising fury. His presence shifted the entire air around them. Marcus wasn't just Malik's uncle. He was the pillar that had held the boy's life together after his grandmother passed. Seeing Malik curled on that cold bench, envelope beside him, eyes swollen, something broke inside Marcus without a visible crack. He dropped to one knee instantly, ignoring the expensive fabric of his suit. "Come here," he said softly. Malik didn't walk. He collapsed into Marcus's arms. Every emotion he had held inside burst free. Marcus held him tightly, rubbing his back, letting the boy cry until the tremors slowed. The world around them, the cars, the people, the cold wind, faded into nothing. When Malik finally pulled back, Marcus wiped his nephew's cheeks gently with his thumb. "What happened?" he asked, but his voice wasn't angry. Not yet. It was heartbreak, disguised as calm. Malik told him everything, every insult, every accusation, every laugh, Richard's words, Grace's smirk, the customer's silence, the moment he'd been thrown out, the phone falling and cracking, the way no one cared. Marcus didn't speak once, not during the entire recounting, but the longer Malik talked, the darker Marcus's eyes became. By the time the boy whispered the final sentence, "They said Grandma's money wasn't real," Marcus's jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle in his cheek pulsed. He stood slowly, helped Malik to his feet, placed a firm hand on his shoulder, and said in a low, steady voice, "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Today they failed you. But they won't walk away from that failure." Malik shook his head weakly. I don't want to go back in there." Marcus knelt again so he could meet Malik's eyes. "I know," he said gently. "But champ, sometimes we have to face the people who tried to break us, not to give them more power, but to show them they don't have any." Malik stared at the glass doors, remembering every awful second. His stomach twisted. His hands trembled. But then he remembered his grandmother's words. Dignity is carried. He took a slow breath and whispered, "Okay." Marcus squeezed his hand. "I'm right beside you." They took only 2 steps toward the entrance when another vehicle pulled into the parking lot. A black SUV with tinted windows gliding to a stop like it carried something urgent. The door opened, and Patricia Hale, regional director of Crestwood National Bank, stepped out. Her posture was straight, her stride fast, and her expression a storm barely contained. She had received Marcus's call during a high-level investor meeting, but the moment she heard the words child, discrimination, and your branch, she canceled everything and drove straight to Crestwood. "Mr. Carter," she said breathlessly as she reached him, "I came as soon as I heard. I cannot begin to express." Marcus raised a hand, stopping her. "Save it for inside," he said calmly. But the calm carried the weight of a man used to moving entire corporations with a single directive. Patricia nodded. "Of course, whatever you need." She turned to Malik, her tone softening. "I am so sorry, sweetheart. None of this should have happened to you." Together they walked toward the doors, Marcus on one side of Malik, Patricia on the other. From outside, Malik could already see inside the lobby. Customers moving, tellers typing, the normal rhythm of wealth and routine. But the moment the 3 walked through the glass doors, that rhythm shattered instantly. Conversations dropped. People froze mid-step. Even the air felt tight with anticipation. Richard Halston, still standing near the main counter, looked up, and his face changed instantly from confidence to confusion, then to pure dread. Patricia Hale, unannounced. Marcus Carter, the Marcus Carter, whose name appeared on quarterly investor letters and executive boards. And the small boy he had thrown out, standing tall between them. Richard tried to swallow, but the sound was loud and awkward. He rushed forward, voice wobbling. "Miss Hale! Mr. Carter! I didn't know you were—" Patricia cut him off with a single sharp glance. The silence that followed was colder than the November air outside. Then Marcus stepped forward, his tone even, but devastatingly controlled. "Your bank threw out my nephew," he said. The words were soft, too soft. "You accused him of fraud. You mocked him. You humiliated him. You told a child, my family, to get out." Richard opened his mouth, but only a broken sputter escaped. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "So tell me, Mr. Halston, what irregularity justified treating a 10-year-old boy like a criminal today?" The lobby had never been so silent. Every employee stared. Every customer held their breath. Harold, the security guard, stared at the floor, guilt written all over him. Grace looked like she was seeing a ghost rise from the ashes she had created. Richard tried again, weakly. There were inconsistencies in his story. "I was following protocol." Marcus didn't blink. "Which protocol allows you to insult him? To raise your voice? To laugh? To drag a child across your lobby like a threat to national security?" Richard's face drained of color. Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Say it. Out loud. What about him made you assume he didn't belong here?" Richard froze. Because he knew the truth. And so did everyone watching. Patricia stepped in, voice sharp. "Grace, pull up the account." Grace hesitated, then typed with trembling fingers. The screen loaded. A number appeared so large, several people gasped aloud. 452,110, nearly $500,000, 40 years of a grandmother's sacrifice glowing brightly in digits that made Richard sway on his feet. Patricia stepped aside so he couldn't avoid looking at it. Marcus's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You laughed at his shoes. Now you see what those shoes were worth." Richard's knees almost buckled. Customers exchanged horrified glances. Grace covered her mouth. Harold's shoulders fell with regret. Malik stood silently beside Marcus, not triumphant, not proud, just relieved that finally someone was fighting for him. Marcus rested a hand on Malik's shoulder. "My mother, his grandmother, saved every penny she earned. She skipped meals, took the bus in the snow, wore secondhand coats for him. And you dared to tell him he didn't belong here." Patricia inhaled sharply. "Mr. Halston," she said, voice cold and final. "My office, now." The entire lobby watched as the proud branch manager walked the same path Malik had walked when they threw him out. Except this time, every step felt like judgment. Every step felt like consequence. And Malik, standing in the center of the bank he had once been humiliated in, felt something shift inside his chest. Not revenge, but something quieter and more powerful. Recognition. He mattered. And everyone in that room knew it now. Inside Patricia Hale's glass-walled office, the confrontation erupted like a storm that had been building all morning. The door closed behind Richard Halston with a quiet click, but it did nothing to mute the tension vibrating through the room. Marcus stood with his hands clasped behind his back, controlled and steady, while Malik sat in one of the leather chairs, his feet barely reaching the floor, watching the world that hurt him slowly unravel. Richard, stripped of his arrogance, hovered near the window like a man awaiting a verdict. Patricia began, without hesitation. "I have reviewed your behavior across multiple reports, Richard. But today?" She looked at Malik, then back at the trembling manager. Today is unforgivable. She listed every violation, falsifying complaints, discriminating against clients, dismissing IDs from neighborhoods he labeled as risk zones, forcing security to handle situations he escalated himself, mocking customers who didn't meet his standards. Richard tried to interrupt, but Patricia held up a hand. Do not speak. You've spoken enough. And the damage you caused today? She gestured toward Malik. A child. A literal child. Her voice cracked slightly, a rare moment of emotion from a woman known for being unshakable. You should be ashamed. But Richard wasn't ashamed yet. Not truly. His voice finally broke free. I didn't know who he was, he blurted, hands shaking. I didn't know he had money. If I had known. Marcus stepped forward, and the room shifted. That, he said quietly, is exactly the problem. Richard blinked, confused and sweating. Marcus leaned in a little closer, his voice as controlled as a lawyer presenting the final line of a closing argument. You keep talking about who he is only in terms of what he has. He pointed gently at Malik. That's where you failed. You didn't need to know his wealth to treat him with dignity. You didn't need to know who I am to respect him. He deserved that because he walked in as a human being. But you saw his shoes, his coat, his skin, and decided he wasn't worth your time. Richard swallowed hard, eyes bouncing around as if looking for an escape. Patricia spoke again, voice cold and sharp. You're fired. Effective immediately. Your access is revoked. Security is waiting outside to escort you out, and I will personally ensure your misconduct becomes part of your official employment record. The words hit Richard like stones. His shoulders slumped, his breath shallow, the reality settling over him like a heavy curtain. There was no saving this, no spinning it, no hiding it. He turned slowly toward Malik, not to apologize from the heart, but from desperation. I didn't mean... Malik looked at him with a quiet strength he didn't know he had. You didn't care to mean anything different, he said softly. It was the first time Malik had spoken since entering the office. Richard froze. Marcus placed a gentle hand on Malik's back, pride radiating quietly. Patricia nodded toward the door. Leave. Richard walked out of the same building he lorded over moments earlier, this time small, silent, and stripped of every ounce of power he once misused. When the door shut behind him, it felt like the entire bank exhaled. Patricia turned to Marcus. Mr. Carter, I cannot express how sorry we are. Marcus gestured toward Malik. Apologize to him, not me. Patricia knelt beside Malik, not caring that her business suit tightened awkwardly as she did. Malik, you were wronged in a way no child ever should be. I promise you, this bank will make it right, starting now. She slid a folder onto the desk. We are restoring full access to your grandmother's account. And I'm giving you something else. Your own personal advisor, someone trained, patient, and kind, someone who will treat you the way your grandmother intended. Malik didn't know what to say, not to a director, not to someone whose job title sounded bigger than life, but Patricia smiled softly. You don't need to say anything today. Just know you belong here. You always did. As Malik and Marcus left the office, the entire lobby shifted like a tide turning. Employees stood straighter. Several customers stepped back respectfully. Harold, the security guard who had looked away earlier, approached hesitantly. Kid, I'm sorry, he murmured. I should have stepped in. I should have done something. I was wrong. Malik nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, and it was enough. Marcus placed his hand on Malik's shoulder. Come on, champ, we're not done yet. Malik frowned. We're not? Marcus grinned. No, there's one thing left. He led Malik back to the same main counter where Richard had mocked him. Grace stood there, stiff as a statue, fear and embarrassment painted across her face. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply said he would like to check his account. Grace's hands trembled as she typed. Malik silently stepped forward, shoulders back, chin up. The screen lit up again with the same number, 452,910s. This time, no one laughed. No one whispered. No one mocked. Malik stared at it, not believing the number, but believing something far more important. His grandmother believed he deserved it, and so did Marcus. Grace whispered, "The account is active, sir. I mean, Malik. Everything is in order." Malik nodded politely. "Thank you." Grace lowered her gaze in shame. As Marcus and Malik walked toward the exit, the sun outside had shifted, casting warm light through the glass doors. The cold wind of the earlier morning had softened into a breeze that felt almost gentle. Malik stepped out, holding the envelope close, not out of fear anymore, but pride. "Uncle Marcus," he said quietly. "Yeah, champ?" "Grandma, she would have been proud today, right?" Marcus stopped, placed both hands on Malik's shoulders, and looked him straight in the eyes. "She would have been proud of how you walked in. She would have been proud of how you walked out. And she would have been proud that you stood your ground when grown adults didn't." Tears welled in Malik's eyes again, but for the first time that day, they weren't from hurt. They were from relief. They walked to the car, but before Malik got in, he turned back to look at the bank one last time. The building that had once made him feel invisible now looked smaller. Not physically, but in the way things shrink when you stop giving them power. Malik took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Dignity is carried." And this time, he felt it. As the car pulled away from the curb, Malik watched the bank fade into the distance. A place that tried to tear him down had become the place where he reclaimed something far greater than money: his worth, his courage, his voice. And he knew. This was only the beginning of the life his grandmother had wanted for him.